Haven't you wondered all this time who Thomas Shelby's parents were? What would his mother look like? And how did Thomas Shelby actually become a gypsy? Is that because of his mother? Or is it in-laws? All questions that come to mind while watching the series, because let's face it, will his parents have been as criminal? Keep watching until the end, because especially at the end of the video you will find all the answers. Thomas Michael Shelby was born in 1890 to Arthur and Mrs. Shelby. He was born on a boat in a barge called the January, and he had an older brother, Arthur Shelby, with whom he was very close as a child. Thomas' parents had 3 more children, John, Ada, and Finn Shelby, over the years. Thomas's parents were both gypsies, so he and his siblings were full-blooded gypsies as well. Polly Gray, Thomas's paternal aunt, implies that the Lee family is related to the Shelby family through their mother. They also have Irish traveler ancestors, as Polly mentions that they should not speak Shelta around Carl Trone, who speaks Irish traveler. It is also implied that their father was a part Irish traveler. Growing up in Small Heath, Birmingham, Thomas carried a switchblade and a screwdriver with him and would tell the other kids in the neighborhood that he would lay curses, so they were afraid of him and didn't pick on or tease him. Thomas and his siblings would have to go to the garrisons to get their father's beer. However, because they were so small, carrying 1 bucket back to their house would require 2 of them. Thomas would also get into fights with his brothers over cigarettes, and when Thomas was 9 and Arthur was 12, they got into a huge physical fight. Thomas pinned Arthur to the ground and began hitting him over the head several times, eventually winning the fight, though Thomas admitted that Arthur let him win. Their mother had a close friend, Charlie Strong, who was also a lot during their childhood, so they looked up to him as their uncle. When the youngest Shelby siblings were still a baby in 1909, their mother became severely depressed and considered suicide. Their father was no help, so Charlie stepped in and persuaded her to leave Birmingham and travel to Worcester. She returned from her trip with a white pony which she gave to Thomas. For a few weeks, she watched Thomas ride the pony around, seemingly in a much better mood than she was before her trip. Charlie thought she was superior, but he was mistaken. Mrs. Shelby, like her father before her, jumped into the canal and committed suicide shortly after her return. Mrs. Shelby's body had to be removed from the canal, which broke Charlie's heart because he was secretly in love with her. Thomas's father began struggling to cope with raising 5 children on his own shortly after Mrs. Shelby's death. He eventually left Birmingham, leaving them all in the care of his sister. Polly was left to raise her niece and nephews on her own, and she became the head of the household as well as their mother figure. When the Shelby siblings were older, they had a lot of respect for Polly because they were so grateful for everything she had done for them. Thomas fell in love with an Italian girl named Rosie before 1914. Her parents were opposed to a gypsy boy dating their daughter, but Thomas's charm and sweetness eventually won them over. Greta became extremely ill with consumptions a few months later, and despite the fact that the disease was contagious, Thomas stayed by her bedside for 3 months holding her hand. Greta died as a result of her illness, which broke Thomas's heart. While at the Appleby Fair in May 1914, Thomas met a Romani girl named Zelda. Zelda stole Thomas's watch and chain, but they had intimate relations underneath a hazel tree later that day. When Zelda became pregnant with Thomas's child, her father shot Thomas in the chest with a squirrel gun. Her father wanted to murder Thomas, but before he could, Thomas and 2 of his brothers were sent to fight in World War I. While Thomas was still fighting in France during World War I, Zelda gave birth to their son Erasmus Shelby in early 1915. Despite the fact that Thomas returned from the war in 1918, he never attempted to contact Zelda, and she raised her son alone. When Erasmus grew up, he asked his mother who his father was, and Zelda told him a lie. Zelda still had Thomas's watch, which had the words Saxon Shore carved on the back, so she told Erasmus that his father was the Duke of the Saxon Shore. As a result, Erasmus changed his name to Duke, and he dislikes it when people use his given name. It is implied that Thomas's personality changed dramatically before and after his experiences as a tunneler or sappler during World War I. After the war, he began to exhibit PTSD symptoms, including frightening nightmares, flashbacks, and hallucinations, which he kept to himself. Shelby is depicted as a sergeant major in the Small Heath Rifles, a non-commissioned officer in charge of the unit's well-being, morale, and training. His flawless performance in this role earned him unwavering respect from members of his unit as well as other veterans, and cemented his reputations on the streets. In terms of his ancestry, Thomas claims to be related to the Lee family on his mother's side, and Johnny Docs claimed that Thomas's grandfather was a king, most likely a gypsy king. He is the Shelby siblings' second child. As much as the spotlight is on the Shelbys, Thomas is driving force behind the majority of their actions and the one held accountable when things go wrong. Throughout the show, we see Tommy pursue more power, taking him from the street of Birmingham as a smuggler and bookie to the highest levels of British government as a member of parliament. Tommy has made many sacrifices in this pursuit, but he is unable to settle down and be satisfied with what he has already accomplished. In a rare moment of candor, Thomas admits that even if he wins the current battle against a formidable foe, the war will not over for him, stating, "I will continue until I find a man that I cannot defeat." While Peaky Blinders is primarily about violent men doing violent things, the women in the series are no slouches either. Polly Gray, Tommy's aunt and the official treasurer of the Peaky Blinders bookie business, is the most prominent of the ladies. Polly is a well-respected member of the organizations due to her tactical mind and business skills. Despite not actively participating in the gang's more violent enterprises, she is one of the few people who can occasionally persuade Tommy to change his mind, and the rest of the gang treats her with respect bordering on reverence. Arthur Shelby is Tommy's older brother, right-hand man, and the Peaky Blinders' loose cannon. Despite being expected to lead the gang, Arthur eventually accepts Tommy's leadership and relinquishes control of the Blinders to his younger brother. Arthur is the most respected and feared member of the gang, and for good reason. Arthur, like Tommy, served in World War I and was deeply affected by his experiences. John Shelby completes the Shelby brothers' main trio. John, who is more emotionally stable than his older brothers, Tommy and Arthur, served in the army during World War I but had a relatively easier time letting go of the trauma he experienced. John, like Arthur, is completely loyal to Tommy and content to work for him rather than vie for the positions of gang leader. Unlike Arthur, John does not fly into rages, despite being a brutal combatant. Nonetheless, John is easily provoked when he perceives himself or his family being disrespected, and this personality trait ultimately proved to be his undoing. Tommy, Arthur, John, and Polly led the Peaky Blinders to unimaginable heights during their tenure as gang leaders, but those four will not be around forever to lead the organizations. This is where Finn Shelby enters the picture. Finn, Tommy's youngest brother and the only one who did not fight in World War I, is 11 years old in Season 1. Finn is not involved in the day-to-day operations of the gang due to his young age, and his brothers and Aunt Polly are fiercely protective of him whenever Finn comes into contact with any of the nastier aspects of belonging to a crime family. When it comes to manual work, Charlie Strong is one of the Peaky Blinders gang's most capable members. Tommy relies heavily on Charlie to help stock and prepare shipments, as well as to care for Shelby Company's limited horses. Charlie attends many of the family gatherings where Tommy discusses his most secret plans with his closest allies. And that's all for today's video. Want to know more things about the Peaky Blinders or Thomas Shelby? Please subscribe to our channel. And what do you think of the parents? Do let us know in the comment section below.